safe place right now because there's a very good chance we have winds in excess of 50 miles per hour coming through with this storm. You can see lightning strikes that are coming through. And as we kind of do an MRI scan, that's the way to kind of think about how we're 3D slicing through this storm. We're not looking down and seeing where the heaviest rain is. We're looking at a side profile of the storm. Remember, it's a three-dimensional storm, and when we do that, we see the little bumps and ridges. It almost looks like a mountain here. The tallest points of these storms can oftentimes be the most dangerous. So when we look at this, here's Arlington, here's Findlay. I'm going to call out Route 23. If you live along Eagles Creek south of Findlay as well, I'd be getting to your safe place, the Blanchard River south of Findlay, and again down towards the airport, out towards the reservoir, and points to the south there. That's where it looks like the strongest of the storms are right now. And Findlay, I know you're no stranger to these straight line wind events. Chris, you'll remember this. I believe it was a Sunday evening several years ago. Came right down the west part of town there towards the Ralphie's and where some other restaurants are, and they had some big time damage out towards the high school as well. Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage out at the high school. Ryan, brand new report that's coming in right now. This out of the Swanton area, in Fulton County Fire Department's reporting that there are wires down on State Route 64 and County Road K. So that is out towards Swanton. Again, some wires down. It's a good reminder as some of these tree limbs topple. They topple wires. You don't want to head out after the storm blows through to observe any damage with the risk of power lines being down. And those power lines very well could still be live and active. So do not head out to survey that storm damage. If you see down power lines, just go ahead and do the smart thing. Call the authorities. Call the power company, have them come down and make sure that that juice is cut to those power lines before you venture out. You don't want to have an unfortunate incident after the storms roll through, and they're going to be rolling through for quite some time. And again, we'll reset the stage with this one. A wall of strong to severe storms rolling into the area. Monroe County getting hit right now down through the Toledo Metro, Perrysburg, Maumee, east of I-75. Seeing some heavier storms that are coming through, and you can see it right now. That is a live look, great view. They're side by side, so you can actually see what it would look like out your window and what it looks like with what we analyze on First Alert Doppler radar. And in fact, here's what we're going to do. While we have that window up, we're going to do exactly what First Alert meteorologist Ryan Wichman was doing, slicing through the storm to show exactly what it's doing, sort of like an X-ray or an MRI. And as those really big torrential raindrops come down, and you see them right off to the side there, we slice through that thunderstorm and show this one towering to about 30 to 35,000 feet. And to be honest, Ryan's seen some stronger tops on these storms of 50 to 55,000. So the one across the metro, perhaps not our strongest storm that we have across the area. So that perhaps a bit of good news, but it still has produced some high winds and wind gusts that have potentially produced some damage. We're going to get hyper local on this. So we'll switch back over. We go full screen on First Alert Doppler radar. I've taken First Alert Doppler radar right into the University of Toledo. And we've got some torrential rain that is still occurring over toward the University of Toledo. We're in the vicinity of Bancroft, down toward Dorr, and that extends, of course, back over towards Secor. We've got Ottawa Hills here. There's Richards, where we've got Ottawa Hills, and some of the heavier rainfall that is just beginning to lighten up toward the University of Toledo. It's coming down, though, in Rossford. In fact, a lightning strike that was recently reported, that out by the Toledo Zoo and the Anthony Wayne Trail. We've got Route 24, and we're looking at conditions that are going to be quite torrential as far as the rainfall. Now we're looking east of I-75 as well toward I-280. Just across the river, there's downtown Toledo. There's our TV station right there on Front Street there, or just off of Front Street there on the east side of the river, and looking toward Oregon, where we've got torrential rain that is occurring, a really heavy rain that's been showing up across the majority of the metro. And some of the live views beginning to lighten up a little bit toward Airport Highway, so that is a bit of good news with that. Now, wider perspective on the Toledo Metro. We're at least going to carry this another 4 minutes, that official severe thunderstorm warning, until 3:45. Now, First Alert meteorologist Diane Phillips with me. Diane, if you could take First Alert Doppler radar down toward Hancock County, specifically in and around the Findlay area, that'd be greatly appreciated. We understand we are joined right now by our friends and our radio partners down on WFIN and a partner radio station. So great to have you listening as well as viewing here on WTOL 11. And the reason why we're going to take you down toward Findlay, and for the listeners, the heaviest of this downpour, Findlay, south on Route 68 and I-75. Really an area that's been clobbered right now is down toward Rawson and headed toward Bluffton, where the heaviest of the rain right now is across southern Hancock County. There's a fresh lightning strike, and maybe you just heard that boom in around downtown Findlay. That is just off of Main Street, where that thunder is no doubt booming. We're hearing it as well over the downtown Toledo skyline. Diane, widen this out just a little bit. Let's get a little south on I-75. I-75 from the junction with Route 68 and State Route 15 shows where we have the heaviest of the rainfall, and that extends from the south end of Findlay down I-75 all the way to Bluffton is where it's an absolute torrential downpour. The heaviest of the rain has just moved east of Benton Ridge, and we can widen out just a little bit more as this moves east of Route 68. In fact, between Findlay and Arlington on Route 68, it is an absolute downpour, and that also could be the core of where we're getting some gusty winds, Route 68 and east. So let's go over in this vicinity, Diane. We should be headed toward Van Lew and Mount Blanchard, some areas. There it is, Van Lew popping up on the map, showing some heavy rain that just arrived moments ago in and around Van Lew. And we're looking at some really heavy rain. Here's State Route 15, and again, that takes you out of Hancock County. That's a pretty popular route that you travel, State Route 15 that goes just past Cary. Now, Cary officially has been now extended and included into that severe thunderstorm warning. We mentioned that about 25 minutes ago, that it would likely be extended. Those warnings will continue to be extended as well. So from Van Lew, where the rain is just letting loose, to Cary, where it is moments away from arriving, so go ahead and seek shelter down toward Cary. Diane, give us a good view of all of Wyandotte County down here so we could show where we got the heaviest of the rain. Again, just moving out of Hancock County, it is just entering into Wyandotte County, so these warnings well in advance. Diane, if you could draw some time of arrivals, the leading edge of that where First Alert meteorologist Ryan Wichman has pointed out, that's where the gusty winds are. And we're to pull this out about 40 miles per hour is where those are tracking. And we're looking at Cary, as we said, in the next 4 minutes, it is going to be headed into Cary. So you have moments in Cary until it arrives. It's going to be after 4 o'clock in Upper Sandusky, perhaps even closer to about 4:05 when that arrives in the Upper Sandusky area. So seek shelter as strong storms are going to be rolling into Wyandotte County. And of course, we've got our listeners down on our radio partners at WFIN and WKXA. They are tuned in and listening as well. Strong storms are going to be moving east of Route 68 and I-75. Let's turn it over to First Alert meteorologist Diane Phillips, and she again continues to monitor our severe storm reports. And Diane, it seems like every time we check in with you, the warnings get larger and larger. This includes all of the I-75 corridor and now our counties to the east. They're next up.
That's right. They were just added on our list of warnings. So we just got this information less than 5 minutes ago. And so if you are in cities like Fremont, Tiffin, Upper Sandusky, if you are in Sandusky County, Seneca County, and even Wyandotte counties, even the northwest corner of Crawford County, you are going to be under that warning until 4:30. Now you can see if you are right along I-75 and east, you are still under that warning, but they actually just expired and updated our warnings. So if you are west of I-75, then you are now out of the warning and you can come up out of your safe place. But if you are in those locations where we do see that yellow, that means you do still have to stay in your safe spot and make sure you're getting updates on air and online. Of course, you can do that on the First Alert weather app as well. Now, some of the local storm reports we've seen, though we do have quite a few warnings in Northwest Ohio, also Southeast Michigan has also been seeing those warnings. We had a report come out of the Britain area, even towards Macon, of a 70-mile-per-hour tree that was down, also causing some 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts causing tree damage there. So that's one of our reports of 70-mile-per-hour winds. Another one we had was just further west, but on the stop over there towards Swanton, we have down wires. So that means power outages are going to be possible as these storms roll in. And of course, be cautious if you are going to be traveling on your evening commute because you could run into some road closures because of down power lines. Of course, we'll be keeping an eye on that later on. Now, another report of some 70 mile per hour or more as far as those winds was towards Hicksville. This was about a half hour or so ago, and that there in Defiance County not only had trees that were down, but also we had to worry about some power lines because we had a roof that was reported that actually blew off into power lines. That was also also towards Hicksville. So that's all from thunderstorm damage. Though we haven't seen any rotation from these systems, we are getting reports of trees down and powers being out, and also structure damage. So even again, though we don't have any tornado watches or warnings, we are still seeing some damage that is really going to be looking very similar to what we would if we did have a tornado situation. So again, you're going to want to stay in your safe place for the moment that you're under those warnings, and we're going to continue to monitor the warnings. But let's take another look at radar. Ryan, you are having to look at radar. What
Still, Diane, you've seen a lot of those reports. You said a lot of them were in Williams, Fulton County. Do me a favor, check in with the National Weather Service real quick while I'll show everybody else what's going on with radar, because I'm really starting to think we're going to get some reports out of Hancock County. This storm, since the last time we just spoke to you a few minutes ago, it's actually grown even taller. I was just checking it out on the First Alert weather app. If you're not there, have a free download, WTOL Weather in your Apple or Android store, free download. You can watch us live from your safe spot. You can also check us out exactly what's going on radar in the hour-by-hour forecast. So we've got a line of storms now starting to run from the Lake Erie shoreline all the way down to Findlay. This is the storm that I'd watch really closely. I just want to give a quick update. We're not forgetting about you up here to the north where you got a lot of lightning. Margaretta and Sandusky, in the next half an hour or so, you've got storms coming in. They're not technically severe. This is the storm that we're watching the closest. Fostoria, Seneca, Tiffin, Bloomville, Attica. Right now, as we speak, this is the storm of the afternoon as far as I'm concerned along the I-75 corridor. We're hearing reports of tree limb damage and stuff around the Toledo Metro. Thankfully, it hasn't been too significant just yet. But this storm down here is now peaking at around 55 to almost 60,000 feet. And the atmosphere simply cannot support a storm that is that tall for very long. We just don't have the right dynamics in the atmosphere. And when this thing comes down, it will produce winds over 60 miles per hour. We have seen this time and time again. So if you live in Findlay, and especially to the east of there. So I'm calling out cities like New Regal, let's say Arcadia, if you live in Fostoria, if you live in Cary, if you live in Van Loo, if you live in Tiffin, I'd be watching this storm closely. I know it is not raining there right now, but the winds out here will be very strong. And for you farmers, yes, we have had several reports of corn flattened with storms earlier over towards the Williams County area. This storm would easily be able to produce that if it does indeed come down the way that it looks like it's doing right now. So let's get over to Chief Meteorologist Chris Vickers. Chris, I thought the storm was tall already when we were talking a few minutes ago at around 50,000 feet. I just looked at an update. It was up to about 55,000 feet.
That's incredible. You know, midsummer is when we often get those taller thunderstorm tops. So that's still some incredible heights. You know, Ryan, it's a little bit of a surprise. It's not generating a lot of hail, and I think you got good expertise on why it's not generating a lot of hail, at least at this point.
Yeah, it just has because of how much moisture is in the atmosphere, how hot obviously it is down here. A lot of that hail just melts before it gets here, but there is hail higher up in the storm, right? Correct. On a day like this that's going up that high, that can contribute as well. Think about this. So many times we talk about straight line winds. Essentially, this is a giant bucket of water and hail being held up in the atmosphere. Think about it. When the storm finally collapses, that bucket is overturned. It goes straight down, straight into the earth and pushes out. And that's where we get those 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind reports. And when you're coming down from 55,000 feet straight down into the earth, that's why I'm just kind of ringing a few more alarm bells here for the Fostoria, New Regal, Arcadia area, Chris, I think in the next 5 minutes or so. Really want to watch it.
You broke it down so nicely, Ryan. In simple science, what goes up must come down eventually. When those thunderstorm winds crash down, they can do some big time damage. And Ryan, you were spot on with this as well. I want to pass along this damage report, and this came right from Findlay, which we highlighted ahead of that storm. Several large limbs are down. One utility pole that is broken off. And of course, the time of that one was just within the past about 15 to 20 minutes as those strong storms rolled through Findlay. So yes, we are getting reports out of the Findlay area. And of course, we urge you to do so only when you're able to do so safely, as we are getting numerous reports. And Ryan had mentioned that one is now marching to the east. Heads up really toward Cary. Those gusty winds have already arrived or are already pushing through Cary and will be coming through very quickly. So I do anticipate that we're going to continue to see some higher wind gusts. I'll let Diane take over First Alert Doppler radar here. Diane, if you could take us back up into the Toledo metro area, and we'll highlight where we still have some storms that are now moving east of the Toledo metro. So the worst of the Toledo metro storm is now off to the east. In fact, we're getting reports now. Some of these wind damage, Diane, if you want to just throw up the exact reports, these come in real time. That's the great thing about these systems. We get the information immediately from the National Weather Service. Go ahead, Diane, choose one of those, and we'll see what reports coming in. So Toledo Executive Airport reporting a 56-mile-per-hour wind gust. So that would be that report right there from Toledo Executive Airport. And how about right up here? We're getting a wind report out there toward some thunderstorms that are out there toward Lake Erie. That's by Maumee Bay State Park that we're getting 50. Was that this morning? So that might be an old report from this morning. So we'll watch closely on that. But yeah, we're getting some reports into the area. And of course, it's been an active sort of pattern over the past 24 to 48 hours. So widen the view out. And then let's head to these clusters of storms off to the east. Looks like a big cluster of storms that's popping up toward Port Clinton, because we're going to continue to watch these move to the east, track them to the east, and we'll get a little closer to this particular storm. It's got an immense amount of lightning, and one thing that lightning could tell us, it tells us a strengthening storm. If the amount of lightning is increasing in that, we've got the potential that this one's going to be increasing in its strength from Port Clinton and headed toward Catawba Island. Heads up, Catawba Island and eastern parts of Ottawa County. We're looking toward Danbury and Marblehead. You're going to be next up as this storm is now racing. It is just moments away from headed toward Danbury and then out there toward Marblehead within the next 10 minutes. So some strong storms that are headed through Ottawa County. We'll get a little bit south now on this, and we could head through Woodville and out of Woodville down toward Bettsville, where the skies are very dark in Bettsville, down toward Fostoria, where the rain is picking up and gusty winds extending with those severe thunderstorm warnings. And one just has been added, looks like, to Erie County now. And again, it's just like a domino effect. These warnings keep coming one after another after another. This is a pretty continuous line of storms. We're just starting to see the rain pick up in Tiffin. At this point, it looks like some gusty winds that may be possible, but the stronger portion of this is no doubt down south toward Cary. Diane, if we could slice through this particular storm, because it's got an immense cluster of thunder and lightning, let's get a slice through this storm here. And again, there's Cary, so it's going to give us a little bit of perspective. And we're going to move first alert Doppler radar back a little bit closer to Cary. I'll keep my marker right there. That's Cary, so it gives you perspective on where the tallest and most severe portion of this storm is. It is about 2 miles west of Cary, and the storm tops on this one, as Ryan was showing us, they're right up there to about 50,000 feet, perhaps even excess of about 50 to 55,000 feet. So it's that air, that warm, moist air, it rises up through the thunderstorms. Those updrafts taking that air up eventually, yeah, they collapse and come back down, and it's those winds that rush out. So we're going to give you a big heads up. One of the strongest storms that we continue to look at, northern parts of Wyandotte County, headed into southern parts of Seneca County. Going to give you a really advanced warning here. Anywhere from Fostoria to New Regal, back toward Cary is where this storm is headed. And just to be in your safe spot as well, toward Tiffin, because this storm is moving east at about 40 miles per hour, has a tremendous amount of lightning, so it will get your attention well in advance of this storm arriving. We'll turn it over as our team coverage continues. We've got First Alert meteorologist Diane Phillips in. We've got First Alert meteorologist Ryan Wichman in, keeping you ahead of these storms. And Diane, what can you tell us about the latest that you continue to analyze as these storms? They're moving east very quickly, 40 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. It's not unusual for storms, especially ones that take this shape, to move this quickly.
That's right, and they are definitely hitting the throttle as they move through, and that means that the locations where we've been looking at those storm reports, you are actually no longer under a severe thunderstorm watch. So we've actually decreased the amount of pink on our map. So if you're in Fulton County, Defiance County, Williams County, and if you're even towards Henry County, you are in good shape as far as these storms passing, because that has now moved on by. But if you are still in Lucas, Wood, and even Hancock counties, not only do you still have that severe thunderstorm watch, but you do on the eastern portion of those counties have the severe thunderstorm warning. So we're going to see that until 4:30. That's going to even extend further east through Wyandotte, Seneca, and also Sandusky counties. And we even have towards Lake Erie, those newer other counties that are coming in. So if you know of anybody who went to Cedar Point today, you're going to want to give them a heads up that they do have severe weather that's going to be moving in. Now, the biggest threats that we've seen from this storm is damaging winds. So we had a report in Lenawee County around Macon, around the Britton area of a 70-mile-per-hour wind gust. We've had trees down. We've also heard reports come out of Monroe County, even towards the Ida area, of multiple trees that have been broken down. So we're going to want to, if anybody's going to be traveling through Monroe County, to keep an eye on local roadways, as you could be running into not only down trees, but be mindful that you could also have down power lines as well. And of course, you'll want to report those to the energy company or emergency managers as quickly as possible. Now we're going to continue to see all the reports of some storms that have been around 73 miles per hour. A lot of our reports we've seen have downed power lines, so we'll continue to see that even towards northwest Ohio around Swanton. We've had thunderstorm damage. You can see multiple reports all the way from Swanton, just south of Lyons, even around the Morenci area, over to Fayette. So everybody has had a chance to see some of these storms, except those that are east of 75, because we're going to continue to keep an eye on those that'll be moving through as well. Another report that we had of 73-mile-per-hour winds was around Hicksville, so that was in Defiance County earlier. Of course, there we are no longer under that severe thunderstorm watch, but this is the power of the storm. We've seen it cause some damage of downed tree limbs and also some structural damage, and that can also lead to downed power lines. So that means power outages, so you're going to want to keep an eye on those. We also have resources on our website if you want to have updates on those power outages. Now we're going to continue to keep an eye on radar as well, so another check on that will be coming from our first alert meteorologist, Ryan Wichman. Ryan, how are things looking outside?
Yeah, Diane, looking like we're still pretty significant far to the south. Now, storm reports, have you seen much from the Toledo Metro so far, Diane?
So far, I haven't seen any reports coming in. We have heard of reports of down power outages, or down power lines, excuse me, and power outages in the Sylvania area, but so far I haven't heard anything as far as trees or any structural damage. So that's good news.
Well, I know our newsroom is checking in on it. Thankfully, haven't heard too much. We'll keep our fingers crossed. We had enough tree damage, as we saw with our Zainab Shaib earlier this morning, some trees down on cars in the central part of the city. Let me take you right to where we think the most significant severe weather threat is right now across northwest Ohio. And it's this storm that has just come out of Findlay. And we had reports on that one, as Chief Meteorologist Chris Vickers told us a few minutes ago, of some tree and power line damage. But I'm still seeing this storm really ramping up, and I want to highlight a few communities as we have over 100 lightning strikes in just the last 10 minutes. So let's zoom in as close as we can. Right here's New Regal. This is 587 right here. You know this area very well if you live down there. When you got the New Regal Cafe, you've got the grain silos there as well. Easy to see from a long distance. Storms now flaring up just south of 224 there. There's Seneca, and of course we've got the Sandusky River that flows right through there as well. Carrie, this is right on top of you, and I would also highlight Wharton sitting just to the south. We are seeing strong straight line wind indications in this area, and this is a spot that is completely wide open. There's really nothing to slow this storm down. It's just north of Upper Sandusky. It's basically trucking right along and just south of 224 right now. So if you're up in Tiffin, you live on the west side of town, out where the fairgrounds would be located there, you might want to start moving inside. And don't forget right here, just in your pocket, how easy it is if you're saying, where I am, I don't have a television, I can't watch you guys anymore. You can watch us live on that First Alert weather app. We're going to keep you updated here. So Chris, we're watching the heaviest portion of this storm. I was seeing indications that we might have been starting to see that collapse we were worried about, maybe in the Cary area, and we're still seeing some indications of that one. And if that does happen, I still think widespread 60 to maybe 75-mile-per-hour winds aren't out of the question.
And Ryan, you could speak from your great experience too. Once we see, as scientists, from all the data we analyze, that storm begin to collapse, the winds could last for several minutes, if not longer than 20 or 30 minutes out in advance of that storm. So yes, far from over, correct?
Yeah, I would absolutely think so. And Chris, I'm looking at the radar behind you. I know I'm a little more zoomed in on what we're considering our most significant severe weather threat in the short term. Can you clarify for me, the line is still holding together, but back off to the west, we're given a little bit of an all clear, correct?
We are. So here's what we're going to do. It's 4 o'clock right on the dot right now. So we're going to reset the stage and give you the wider perspective on where things stand right now, because earlier in the day, the first areas that were actually under an official severe thunderstorm watch was out toward Defiance County, you are absolutely in the clear now. Now, it's still raining, but your severe threat out west of I-75. In fact, if you are along and west of I-75, I'm going to go ahead and give you the all clear at this point just after 4 p.m. So any areas along and west of I-75, that's important to know. You have the all clear, but it has been producing some pretty prolific severe weather, and we could see this across northern Indiana, northwest Ohio. Reports of wind gust and high wind damage that are going to be continuing to come in, and of course only do so when you safely are able to. And of course, if there's any power lines, I always give that advice, do not ever attempt to go anywhere near a power line. Difficult to tell if they're live wires or not. Just call the local authorities and have that taken care of. No doubt that is going to be an important thing that you keep in mind, as the power lines could very well be live as they do come into the area. For the Toledo Metro, the worst of the severe threat is now over with. Diane, Phillips, if you could just go ahead and advance that radar sequence for me. This is perfect here into the Toledo Metro. We're all clear from severe weather in the Toledo Metro. We did get a report. This report came out of the Swanton area, and of course they still may trickle in across the Toledo Metro. Some thunderstorm wind damage, a tree that was blown down on a house in Swanton just off of Brookside Drive, so we'll get a pretty good measurement as well, and we should get a good accurate measurement of how high that wind did gust out of Toledo Express Airport. Same deal down toward Findlay, where the severe weather threat now in Findlay as well has passed, moving to the east. Several large tree limbs down, and including a utility pole that was broken off. That's likely, very likely, just straight line wind damage, of course, though, something that is very damaging that you'd have to contend with. The biggest cluster of rain and thunder from Cary to Van Lew, north now into the southwest corner of Seneca County. So here's where I'm looking at. That's State Route 587. Here's Route 224 right into Tiffin. And we're looking at this area that's headed up into Tiffin, where the heaviest of the wind and the strongest of the wind gusts will be possible. Now, Ryan mentioned this as well, and we talked about the potential of hail. Very low with this. It's really just these wet microbursts and these downbursts that could give us the most significant risk. We're not seeing any rotation with these storms. We're estimating potential hail size. This is really nothing more than pea to possibly penny or nickel sized hail. So we're not really expecting widespread severe weather as far as hail size. If we have a little hail core going here, it's going to be close to the junction of 587 and 224. That's where we're estimating the hail size. Perhaps it's just over 3/4 of an inch, but again, that warm, muggy atmosphere, very effective on melting that hail away. Huge cluster of storms, and we're talking about 166 lightning strikes. That's measured in a 10-minute period, and this is out toward Catawba Island. It was about 12 minutes ago. I gave you a heads up. It was headed toward Catawba Island, up to the Lake Erie Islands, down around Port Clinton, out over Lake Erie, down to Sandusky Bay. And if you're looking toward Bayview and Danbury and the Edison Bridge, we've got really torrential rain that is occurring. That's right out there toward Johnson's Island. In fact, it should be headed right through and over Johnson's Island. Now, we'll give you a heads up, Sandusky, and of course, a very popular attraction down toward Sandusky, Cedar Point. At this point, you know, you've been there on those warm summer days when the skies grow wary. It is a time to seek shelter. If you have maybe the kids out at Cedar Point today or some loved ones out there, of course, give them the heads up. Within moments, it got you right around 4:08 that's going to be rolling into Sandusky. So by my watch, that's about 4 minutes from right now. That is going to be rolling across the Sandusky Bay and headed out towards Cedar Point. So heads up, Sandusky and Cedar Point. The southern flank of this storm, as it moves to the east, slightly northeast, likely to head right across Cedar Point. So again, the wider perspective on this one does look like, for the most part, this squall line, or line that's basically a continuous line of strong to severe storms, extending really from Flint, Michigan, through Detroit, down across, and now east of Monroe County, and east of the Toledo Metro. We're in Ottawa, Sandusky, Seneca, Wyandotte County. Severe thunderstorm warnings along that line and east, and those are actually going to extend now down I-75, pretty close to Wapakoneta. Pretty incredible, the magnitude of that squall line that measures approximately probably 200 to 250 miles from the northern extent to the southern extent. Our team coverage continues. First Alert meteorologist Diane Phillips. And Diane, what's the latest on the data you're analyzing on First Alert Top of the Radar?
Well, I really want to point out that in the Toledo metro area that the bulk of the heavy rain and lightning is now further east. So though we do still have a few lingering thunderstorms, still seeing some of those lightning strikes on First Alert Doppler, we are through the peak of at least that heavy rainfall. But we just got word into our newsroom that charter lines are down. So as far as transportation, we have seen the weather now impact that. So if you do have plans this evening, you're going to want to get updates on their website of when those will be back up and running. But because of the severe weather that we have, again, the charter lines are down. We also have a report of in Western Sylvania of just about 1,500 households that do not have power. Those residents are now without power. So we've seen, even though the storms have passed, they have left a mark here in the Toledo metro area with down power lines and also transportation issues. We've also heard reports just even further north in Monroe County that we have seen some trees that have been down as well. I'll give everybody a check of our watches and warnings where we currently sit. If you're in Monroe County, you're in good shape. It's mainly along the shoreline that we just have that little bit to go as far as that severe thunderstorm warning. But if you are in Sandusky, Seneca, Ottawa, and even Wyandotte counties, the northwest corner of Crawford County, you are also under that severe thunderstorm warning until 4:30. So you still have about 25 minutes to go. You'll want to be in your safe place then. If you are in Wood County, however, you just have a little bit to go. If you're east of I-75, you are still under that severe thunderstorm warning, so you're going to want to be in your safe place still. And even if you're going to be off towards Put-in Bay or even further east towards Erie County, we're still under that severe thunderstorm warning. However, locations that are now in the clear are going to be west of I-75. We've actually seen that severe thunderstorm watch be canceled for even Defiance County, Williams County, and even Fulton County. So you'll just want to be keeping an eye on the First Alert Weather app, because there you can get watches and warnings to see what is active and what has now been expired as this line continues to cruise on through. Now this line's moving at about 40 miles per hour, so let's get a current check of radar and see where it's at now. Ryan Wichman, where are our storms at now?
Yeah, Diane, watching them move through now east of I-75. Good news that we're seeing the watches canceled so quickly, correct?
Yes, thankfully a lot of those warnings, or excuse me, those watches were going to go until 5 o'clock. So we're making good ground on getting these storms pushed out for this evening.
And we've had some people ask, how long is this storm going to last? We know where they're located. It's going to be a quick mover here with storms that are moving at 40 to 50 miles per hour. Here's that storm that we're still watching with very strong winds. It's just now moving into Tiffin. It has plenty of lightning with it. And I want to zoom in and show you a tool we don't use a whole lot here in the First Alert Weather Center, at least not on air. And this is the velocity tool, and it'll show you exactly where the strongest winds are. It has a little bit of a different color table with it, but I'm looking right at this. It's pointing at 65 mile per hour winds in this zone right between New Regal and Tiffin. And this is the part of the storm that's heading up, especially on the south side of Tiffin, but all parts of town could be affected with it. And if it holds together and continues to push on through, this is a radar signature that's very similar to what we saw back off to the west with a storm that crossed the Indiana border, Williams and Defiance counties, that produced some pretty strong wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour. So I just want you to know this is not an isolated storm. We've seen this already, and so I want you to take it a little bit more seriously than maybe you otherwise would, thinking, oh, it's just a summertime thunderstorm coming through. I really think this storm could produce over 60 mile per hour winds in a pretty widespread swath across parts of Seneca County. So Bloomville, 419, that's about 10 minutes away from right now. Bellevue, you've got this. Norwalk eventually in about 40 minutes or a half an hour or so. And then eventually it's going to zoom off if it holds together over towards some Cleveland suburbs. So just be aware of this. I still think the strongest winds are in this storm in Seneca County, and the National Weather Service is seeing that as well. They have new tools in how they classify these severe thunderstorm warnings, and they consider this one, or they said this one could have considerable wind damage with it. So just be aware of that one. This line extends as we've showed you now. Look how quickly it's moving. We came on the air with live wall-to-wall coverage just before 3:30 this afternoon. We've been doing cut-ins all afternoon long, letting you know that these storms were coming in from west in Indiana, and now they're already pushing east from a line from Port Clinton down through Fremont and Tiffin, Upper Sandusky, and point southward. We're going to keep our fingers crossed that the winds stay under control for the most part, but indications here on First Alert Doppler are telling us otherwise from what we've seen out there. Still some steady rainfall across the Toledo metro, but the worst is through. This is basically a 5 to 10 minute window on the leading edge of these storms when they come on past for that strongest wind potential. And once that is over, you do have rainfall, but the severe threat has passed. Now, Chief Meteorologist Chris Vickers is over there analyzing not only the latest data that we're seeing, along with meteorologist Diane Phillips as well. I know they're consulting, figuring out exactly what the next moves are for these storms. Chris, looks like you've got storm reports there.
Yes.
Anything new?
Yeah, several more from West Toledo. We're getting several pictures that are coming in now that the storms have passed of many tree limbs down in Ryan. I've been looking at some of these pictures. They're tree limbs that appear to be about 6 to as much as 8 inches in diameter. So some big tree limbs that have come down across West Toledo. Some more strong storms moving through. Now, it's a very narrow corridor, but it does include Ottawa, Sandusky, Seneca, down into Wyandotte and Crawford County of a severe thunderstorm warning that continues to march across the area. The reason why we continue this coverage on air is the amount of damage that these have reported, and as Ryan Wichman said as well, the threats for some considerable damage from this particular cell that has been down south of Toledo that is now moving into southern Seneca County. Now, in the Toledo Metro, we're starting to get those reports that are trickling in, and again, only do so when you are safely able to. Some high wind gusts and some tree damage reported out toward West Toledo. Really intense cluster of storms, again, from the Lake Erie Islands to Catawba Island to Port Clinton. Was going to show that Jet Express cam that we have, but it appears it may have lost connection or power in the storm, so a good indication of what those gusty winds can do. We're not currently able to access that. We are getting reports now that rain is making its way in towards Cedar Point. Here it is, a live picture that I'm pulling up here from the stream from Cedar Point, and you think of the ups and downs here in Millennium Force. Yeah, the ups and downs of this storm going to be pretty intense as well. So the skies are growing darker just off to the west, and you can see the lighter skies off to the east, and this storm is going to be rolling through Cedar Point, and as you can tell, it looks like and appears like operations are at a halt at Cedar Point. Of course, advised to do so as those storms do threaten. It is still continuing to move off to the east. These storms racing fairly quickly, moving to the east at about 40 miles per hour. And it's what we could do if we got Diane Phillips in here to work the first alert top of the radar. Diane, take us back down in this vicinity, down toward Wyandotte and Crawford and Seneca County. And let's get to the leading edge of this one. Let's take the time of arrival on this particular storm, and we'll move it to the east as it's over Tiffin right now, west on 224. And let's put some tracks or times of arrival where this is going to be going next. We're looking over toward places like Republic that are no doubt going to be getting some of those storms into their area, and officially not under a severe thunderstorm warning yet. Willard out in Huron County, likely to do so, though, as those are going to be extended off to the east. So here it is, some of those times of arrival. How about Bloomville? Just moments from now, if you see the clock, it's about 4:13. We're estimating within the next 60 to 90 seconds, those winds are going to begin to pick up in Bloomville, and they will move to the east very rapidly. Bucyrus, we're looking a little bit closer to about 4:24, and Willard, even though at this point you're not under a severe thunderstorm warning, we like to give you that estimated time of arrival at 4:36, so you can see the distance that it still has to cover from about Bloomville to Willard. It should do that in the next 30 minutes. So heads up toward Willard and Huron County, likely to see an extension of some of those severe thunderstorm warnings that will be headed in your way. So that will be moving right down to 24 and into southern parts of Huron County. If we could dip just a little bit more down to the south here, Upper Sandusky. Diane, let's take a closer look just south of Route 20 here, where we've got some returns that are showing some indication. Perhaps maybe, Diane, we do a slice through this storm here just to see if we're indicating any high wind gusts that could be possibly generated from this storm. Still some active thunder and lightning. It appears this one towering to about 30,000 feet. Remember about 20 minutes ago, we were seeing storms in excess of about 50 to 55,000 feet. Simply put, the taller the storm is into the atmosphere, the more energy it can generate, the higher the wind gusts could be. So this one, perhaps not as much of a threat anymore out toward Upper Sandusky, so that is good news. Not quite ready to give you the all clear yet. Those guys are still really letting loose with some downpours, but we'll keep a close eye on that one. Diane, how about back up to the northern extent of this one? Let's see the northern extent, because we've got severe thunderstorm warnings that still are in effect from the southern end of our viewing area, Upper Sandusky, over through Tiffin. And here's a good recap, Diane, and I'll toss it over to you in just a few moments, and you could give us the latest on what you're seeing. But severe thunderstorm warnings now east of I-75. So again, all clear to the west of I-75. Our current threat zone, though, is Fremont, Tiffin, over toward Norwalk and Sandusky. And Diane, you did so great today breaking down the risk and the threat earlier today on WTOL11 News at noon. And it seems like pretty much down to the hour these played out with the timing we were expected and the risk. What are we currently seeing right now? Diane, still the wind gust the big threat?
Wind gusts are still a big threat. We just got a report into Rossford of a 72-mile-per-hour wind gust. So this is just about 15, 20, maybe even 30 minutes ago. So that's why, again, we are seeing an impact from these storms. The charter lines we did here in our newsroom are down, so that means transportation is going to be an issue for us. But also, we just got a report in that First Energy customers are without power, and that current number is just under 20,000 customers. Now, this is down from this morning because, again, we have not been strangers to severe weather. This morning, we had power outages from downed tree limbs, and we had 31,000 customers this morning that were without power. So thankfully, more customers are getting the lights back on. Again, though, we have about 19,000 customers that don't have power. That is going to be through First Energy. So we just got that report in our newsroom as well. Now, we've been monitoring these gusty winds. We had another report around the Toledo Executive Airport of a 56-mile-per-hour wind gust that came through. So these winds, though they've been cruising through northwest Ohio, they really haven't lost a lot of their energy. So that's why we do still have watches and warnings that are in effect as this line is going to continue to push through. Here's a current look at that line. You can see it's just now passing Tiffin. It's now east of Fremont, but we still have to get through Erie and Huron counties as well. So that's going to be moving through. Currently, just through Upper Sandusky into Wyandotte County is where we are seeing those thunderstorms. But you will see along this line that we still do have dense pockets of lightning. So you can see just around the Sandusky area, but also around Tiffin and then into Wyandotte County. It's those three big bundles of lightning that we are keeping an eye to. So we'll continue to monitor our watches and warnings as well. So far as an update on the severe thunderstorm watch, there's no update there. But just to remind our friends that are off towards our west, if you're in Defiance County, Williams County, Fulton County, Henry County, you are going to continue to be in okay shape now that this line has passed. But if you're along I-75, you do still have that watch, but I'm anticipating that that's going to be canceled early as this line continues to push off towards the east. But mainly we do have our active warnings. These are going to be going until about 4:30, even towards 5 o'clock that we're monitoring this line. This line is moving at about 40 miles per hour. So this is going to continue pushing towards the east. So that's why we're not done with it yet. But these warnings are still going to be here for a while yet. So if you're going to be in Fremont, Tiffin, Upper Sandusky, right where we saw a lot of those heavy rains, that's where we're going to continue to be in our safe places. So if your safe place is inside, away from doors and windows, that's the correct spot to be. If you do have friends or family that are in Erie and Huron counties, you're going to want to give them a call and say, hey, there's damaging winds, there's going to be vivid lightning and thunder, head inside and make sure you are safe. So you're going to want to alert your friends and your family as well as this line continues to push eastward. But let's have another check of radar. Chief Meteorologist Chris Vickers, he's back on our wall. Chris, what are you monitoring?
We're looking at the duration of this. Of course, Diane, you said, I like that. We're not quite all the way through this yet. And of course, started monitoring this as the situation unfolded early this afternoon for our western counties. That squall line has quickly raced through. We've given you the all clear for all areas west of I-75. So that is a good measure. If you are west of I-75, you are all clear of any severe weather. Still the risk, though, for a handful of counties. We're talking Ottawa, Sandusky, Seneca, Wyandotte, Crawford, Erie and Huron counties for the risk of some strong storms. It will be possible still through the next 60 minutes or so as we get through and into our 5 o'clock hour. So let's put the time of arrival out there. It has already arrived. I'm telling you right now, it is coming down in Bellevue. So it is starting to rain very hard. The winds have already come through Bellevue. Heads up toward Perkins. And that storm that is out there now towards Cedar Point, actually just off of the tip of Cedar Point, that is over toward Marblehead. You can see by the lighthouse area, Marblehead Lighthouse, that you'd have some really intense lightning and a very heavy downpour that would be occurring. So Perkins, you're still next up on this one. It's a little bit closer to about 4:29, so I'm going to give you about a 10-minute heads up before it picks up towards Perkins. Norwalk, we're looking a little bit closer to 4:39, so it's still about 15 to 20 minutes away from Norwalk, and similar time of arrival in Monroeville, perhaps a little bit earlier, just after the 4:30 time frame. some of those impressive reports coming out of the Toledo Metro, and you heard it in Rossford, that 72-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And we're starting to get the pictures that are coming in. And let me flash this one up here. This one came from West Toledo, and First Alert Doppler radar was really down at the moment when that storm came through West Toledo and initially arrived out towards Sylvania Township. And here's one of those tree limbs I was talking about. I mean, if you were to grab this tree limb, could you imagine how large that is? It seems like it's about 6 to potentially 8 inches in diameter. This is a tree limb. When it comes down, it appears to be resting at least partially on the side of the house with the top of it toppled over on the roof. That's going to do some damage. So the second time in just today where we've had some wind damage out in West Toledo, and a very good indication of some of that tree damage that we are seeing, and able right here in the First Alert Weather Center to get immediately on air to you to show you what these storms have in fact been doing. But numerous reports now of 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts, all clear west of I-75. Still see that active threat, though, to the east, where we've got numerous severe thunderstorm warnings. And our full team coverage, we've got Diane Phillips in and meteorologist Ryan Wichman as well. And Ryan, one of my favorite features is slicing through these storms, because it's a view that you don't get every day just looking at the First Alert Doppler radar on your First Alert weather app at home. This is where we really kind of get to be a little nerdy about all this.
Well, what most people may not realize is when the National Weather Service has their radars, right, they shoot their radar beam out. They don't just do it in one slice. They actually do multiple slices through the storm so we can get a complete picture. Keep it in mind, these beasts are three-dimensional. And yes, I call them beasts because these storms literally breathe in air. That's the warm, humid air we have out there, and they breathe out air, and that's the stuff that does the damage, and it's the cold rain that comes down on a day like this as well. So here's your three-dimensional slice. Now notice we're west of Toledo, or east of Toledo. This is out towards Attica and just south of Sandusky. This is the storm we've been watching that's been coming out of Seneca County and is just now pushing into Erie and Huron counties right now. New fresh lightning strikes being reported. This is a storm that goes up 30 to 40,000 feet. Not the tallest storm that we've seen so far today, but nevertheless one that will still have the potential for strong, damaging winds. This is right on the heels of the storms we had earlier this morning. I'm looking up towards the Williston, Martin, Genoa area. I know you had big time wind damage this morning up there from that storm that came through about 12 hours ago from 2:30 to 3 in the morning. We covered that all morning long on WTOL 11 Your Morning. I'm glad to see that this line has at least pushed through, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that we don't have too much damage reported as it did. But this is a line that extends from all the way up into Lake Erie down through Upper Sandusky. And let's zoom in. Let's take a live image right now at what is the most prolific lightning maker as far as storms go, just sitting off of Sandusky Bay. Look at this view we have here. This is from the Sandusky State Theater. And boy, oh boy, I'd be really interested if we had a live camera on a Jet Express right now, because Sandusky, this is a marina for where the Jet Express lands right here, and they were just there about 3 minutes ago. They know what they're doing on there, but boy, oh boy, that's going to be a bumpy ride out on Lake Erie. Maybe they're jumping over to Cedar Point and hopping into the marina. But look how dark the skies are sitting just north of Sandusky. The pavement is dry out here. Leads me to believe that the storm, as you see here on First Alert Doppler, is just to the north there. If you're out at the Hotel Breakers or sitting out there at Cedar Point looking off the beach, boy, oh boy, you want to be heading inside. That is a prolific lightning maker. In fact, we've had 157 lightning strikes just in the last 10 minutes alone. So we are very thankful here across the Toledo Metro that the worst of this line of storms has come on through. But meteorologist Diane Phillips, she's been doing a fantastic job running the First Alert weather app, checking out on those storm reports. You've also got the latest, it looks like right now, on our watches and warnings that are being updated constantly.
Right, I want to give everybody an update, though we don't have any new information, just so that folks know whether or not they can exit their safe place. So if you are in the western portion of our viewing area, you are no longer even under the severe thunderstorm watch. But if you are in locations where we do have that pink, which is going to include Lucas, Wood, and Hancock counties, that severe thunderstorm watch is going to go until 8 o'clock tonight. But I anticipate that to be dropped early, considering it's about 4:24 right now. And that means that I don't think we're going to have these storms surviving till that long. Now, those who should be in their safe spaces are going to be under those severe thunderstorm warnings. So that's going to last until 5:15, and that's going to include locations in cities like Fremont, Tiffin, Upper Sandusky. But as this continues to push eastward, the locations like Erie and Huron counties, those locations and residents are going to need to make sure that they are in their safe spot as we head into the next little bit. Now, as far as a current look at radar, we have about 3 bundles of lightning that we're monitoring just around Put-in Bay, even the Sandusky area off towards our islands. That's where we're seeing a good chunk of our lightning. That's where Ryan just saw that we had over 100 lightning strikes there. Another bundle of lightning that we're watching is going to be towards Norwalk. So it's not there yet, but it's going to be riding right along the county line between Erie and Huron counties. So that is our second bundle of lightning that we're watching. But also we had a bundle in Wyandotte County, but that's actually starting to fade and fall apart. Now the sign still packing a punch, but we are starting to see it just diminish a little bit into those cells to get a more cellular look rather than a straight line of thunderstorms. So we're going to continue watching these storms. Mainly our biggest threats have not only been the lightning, even though you can see those dense pockets of lightning, including those high counts of lightning strikes, but also damaging winds. Some of the reports that we've seen have been around 40, 50, 60, and even 70 miles per hour. So these storms are capable of producing straight line winds, which provide us the same damage type that typically tornadoes do. So it may look like that a tornado has come through your area. We haven't seen any rotation. We don't have any reports or watches or warnings for tornadoes, but the damage that we have is for down trees, down power lines, and also some structure damage as well. But that 72-mile-per-hour wind gust was reported in Rossford. So that's going to be right in the Toledo metro area. So that means that even cities have seen and experienced some of these stronger winds. Even at the Toledo Executive Airport, we had about a 56-mile-per-hour wind gust. So we have seen winds that have also knocked down power. Currently our First Energy customers, they have thankfully seen a few more lights come on, but they still have less than 20,000 residents that are without power. Another thing to keep in mind is that TARDA, some of those lines are down. So as far as transportation concerns, we'll have to be keeping an eye on that. So there's still a lot going on. Let's take another peek at radar. Chief Meteorologist Chris Vickers, he is keeping an eye on radar. Chris, how are things looking outside? Yeah,
still very busy to the east of the I-75 corridor. Diane, great job as well with the very detailed information. Of course, that is very impactful to know what's been going on. And of course, what about those 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts? We've seen at least a handful of those, right?
Yes, at least 3 to my knowledge of storm reports that have been coming into our system.
And the closest was to the Toledo Metro was in Rossford at 72 miles per hour.
Yes, the other ones were in Hicksville and then off towards Lenawee County.
And look at this, live pictures right now coming from the Sandusky State Theater. And in fact, just moments ago, this rain has just picked up. And a very cool feature that you could actually see is that fountain, maybe a familiar sight if you're strolling right by the lakeshore, is actually being blown by the winds out of the fountain. It's just an indication of how high these winds are now beginning to pick up as that water gets shot into the air. Look at that, it's like a gusher. Little Old Faithful shooting out by the Sandusky State Theater. Now, you may recall last year, it was in June, where the Sandusky State Theater was hit by high winds and significant damage was done by a storm. The high winds just arriving in Sandusky and continue to pick up as those raindrops are coming down and sometimes looking like in a sideways manner. So it's been a squall line, which means it's a continuous line of storms that stretches all across northwest Ohio. This wasn't one of those chancy type deals where they're hit or miss storms. Basically, every community in northwest Ohio in some way, shape, or form is going to get raked by these storms that extend all the way up past Detroit, in fact, up toward the thumb of Michigan, down Lake Erie and east of I-75, all the way through south of Lima, past Wapakoneta. There's a severe thunderstorm warning. I actually start to see some evidence, some really strong evidence of some outflow boundaries that are coming out of this intense portion of the strong storm. So what do we have active right now? We still have active severe thunderstorm warnings that are in effect, and this is for the eastern edge of our viewing area. Highlighted the Toledo Metro. We had some wind damage that was reported. You're all clear west of Toledo. All the activity is still east of I-75, and in particular, that severe thunderstorm warning until 5:15. So you bet we will be covering this coming up on WTO11 News at 5 p.m. So you're going to want to keep the dial right here. We've kept you informed all day long on the First Alert weather app, and we're going to keep you informed as well as we go into our 5 o'clock news this evening. Severe thunderstorm warning. It's in effect for Crawford, Erie, Huron, and down toward Richland County, just out of our viewing area. This does include the threat of 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts that will be racing ahead of these storms. Next up, it's Norwalk. We told you this will be a little after 4:30, and it's just off to the west. That's over toward Monroeville. Monroeville, where we've got the heavier part of that storm that's working through. Now, again, we showed this earlier. It's a different view on First Alert Doppler radar. It's the velocity or the measurement of the winds coming out of the thunderstorm. And this is gauged by the Doppler radar out toward Cleveland, shooting that beam of energy out into these storms that are advancing. And it can measure the velocity that the winds are coming toward the radar site. And I've seen some indications that those winds, at least where that beam is scanning these out toward Port Clinton or now east of Port Clinton through Sandusky, has been showing indications that those winds, and that's the actual measurement from the energy of that radar beam, showing winds potentially to 58 miles per hour. And of course, could potentially even be a bit stronger down toward the surface. So quick recap of what we have active right now. Severe thunderstorm warnings that are active from the Lake Erie Islands, eastern Ottawa County into Erie, Huron County, southeastern Seneca County, and now you've given the all clear in Wyandotte County, but still a severe thunderstorm warning in Crawford County. We've also seen that severe thunderstorm watch be dropped west of I-75, and I'm giving you the all clear as well, all across the Toledo Metro, Findlay, Bowling Green, Toledo, and even now towards the western side of Seneca and Sandusky and Ottawa County will give you the all clear for those storms that have now moved off to the east. So certainly going to continue to watch these stronger storms that are moving to the east from Sandusky out toward Norwalk. The potential is they may be creating some gusty winds as those move through. And again, that velocity indication is showing the potential out there of those winds coming inbound as those storms approach Erie and Huron County, up to about 58 miles per hour. And a look at the radar view shows a couple clusters of lightning. Those give us clues as well to where we have the strongest storms. We've got some lightning clusters that is just outside of Norwalk. So that's right around Monroeville, where we've got that cluster of lightning that is headed right down Route 20. So really anywhere, Route 20 from Norwalk back through Monroeville and extending toward Fremont, where the rain is now beginning to lighten up. So just lightening up toward Clyde and Green Springs, up toward Route 6 in toward Sandusky, where we have those showers and storms. First Alert meteorologist Ryan Wichman also keeping close coverage on this one. Ryan, pulling some late duty tonight. What are you looking at on First Alert Doppler radar?
Yeah, Chris, hard to believe this morning, about 12 hours ago, we were looking at almost a similar situation with these thunderstorms rolling on through, and here we are in the middle of the afternoon.
Round number 2, and this one has a little more juice to it, right?
This is more the traditional timing as well, maybe not such a rude awakening as we got this morning.
And widespread, too. We're seeing many communities. This isn't one of those things, Ryan, where it's just a few communities that were touched. I mean, these types of squall lines that extend all the way from the thumb of Michigan down to Wapakoneta, that's about 200, 250 miles.
Now, Chris, talk to me as well, because you and me were chatting this morning. We got done with our morning shows. Of course, we have WTOL 11 Your Day, goes from 9 to 10 a.m. We were looking at the storms, kind of recovering from what happened this morning. And we were looking all the way out in Illinois at this, correct?
And we said, uh-oh, it looks like things are changing quickly. It's been really tough to kind of figure out the finer details of these storms, but once we saw some of the signatures of how these storms were evolving, we were right on top of it. You knew first on the First Alert weather app that we issued a First Alert day for today, and certainly panned out with the widespread wind gust and wind damage. Ryan, how close do you feel we are to the end of this, as we're getting pretty close to our eastern counties seeing the all clear soon?
Yeah, I think we're really good for us. Probably in the next half an hour or so, just because of the speed that these storms are going for us here. Chris, let me just show you what's going on First Alert Doppler here. And you mentioned how widespread these thunderstorms truly are. They extend from the thumb of Michigan down across Ontario and then here into the central part of Ohio. And I've heard from many of you over the last few years, we haven't had a whole lot of severe weather. And you said, what happened to those classic squall lines that we used to get? Well, here's your answer. We still get them, I promise you. And this is about as classic of an August thunderstorm line as we will have. Unfortunately, it is, of course, producing damage, as we've seen reports several spots in northwest Ohio of over 70-mile-per-hour winds. Now, when we zoom in a little bit closer here, well, here's what we're going to look at across northwest Ohio as far as watches and warnings are concerned, because the National Weather Service keeps these up. They have dropped the watches for west of I-75 in northwest Ohio. It does still continue here for Lucas, Wood, and Hancock County, although those will likely kind of be piecemeal dropped as this line of storms come on through. That's the shade of pink. In the orange here, this would be a severe thunderstorm warning. This is for Crawford, Erie, and Huron counties as well. Now, one thing I do want to tell you, meteorologist Diane Phillips, she's heading out the door right now. She has her keys in hand. We're going to get First Alert Defender out there and show you some of the pictures of the damage that have happened across the Toledo Metro. So you're going to want to stay with us. You just heard Chief Meteorologist Chris Vickers talking about the fact that we have live team coverage coming up at 5 o'clock on WTOL 11 at 5. And we promise we're going to keep you ahead of these storms because there are still communities out here. Yes, we know you're watching out there. Norwalk, Sandusky. Yes, it has pushed east of Toledo, but we stay with communities when it is a big severe weather threat like this one. It is a squall line from the Erie Islands through Sandusky, Norwalk, and all the way down towards Crawford, where you had a pretty nasty storm just the other night as well. Look at the lightning enveloped with this one here. So Put-in Bay, it's just to the east of you. Sandusky, it's just to the north of you. In fact, let's look at this one more time here. We've got a couple cameras. I want to bring them up and so we can see exactly what's going on. Sandusky State Theater was up a moment ago. Let's see if we've got them online. Wouldn't be surprised if they lost power. Remember, this is a spot that was heavily damaged by those severe storms just a couple, about 12, 13 months ago. Here's the way it looks out at Cedar Point. It looks like nobody's on the midway here. I wouldn't imagine that they are. They've got lots of safe places there. There's the Sandusky State Theater again, still down for us. And when we look one more image for us here, Chris, I want to look at the Catawba Island. We've got an image here of the churning waters of Lake Erie. By far the worst of the storms are east of here now, but still a very interesting image. And with meteorologist Diane Phillips heading out there, storm reports across the Toledo Metro, a 72-mile-per-hour wind gust at Rossford, Chris. That's really impressive for the Toledo Metro.
Downtown Toledo is what was coming through our Fifth Third Bank camera. Ryan was giving us that view. What's the one thing that you see, Ryan, when these storms approach as far as the gusty winds? It's not uncommon to see a dark shelf cloud that kind of rolls towards you as well, right?
These are those SLCs we talk about on social media, right? The scary looking clouds. Yes, it's a roll cloud. And so many times we hear from viewers out there, simply because we don't get a lot of these storms, they see what they consider rotation in the clouds. But there's two types of rotation, right?
Very clear. Yes, two types.
You can have one that's rotating horizontally. That's what we get with these storms. It's essentially pushing outwards. The type we don't want is the vertical sort of rotation.
Right, and especially when that tightens up. And we haven't seen that as far as anything that's been rotating vertically, which would mean a tornado risk. And fortunately, we haven't had any of that one. And you and I were talking, Ryan, when you came back in for double duty today, you said, is there anything that's shown any indication that a few of these could spin up any isolated tornadoes? And we both kind of shook our head and said, it just doesn't look like one of those scenarios.
We don't have the upper and mid-level winds of the atmosphere to really support a storm that's going to stretch out, rotation like that one today.
Right.
So it was very nice that we could kind of put that end of the severe weather threat on the shelf. But these straight line winds, I can see from the reports behind you. Look at how it continues to fan out as this storm pushes across the area.
And exactly right, Ryan. A good point here. If you did see 70-mile-per-hour winds, you're thinking, boy, it certainly looks like perhaps tornado damage. It's had reports of, sheds that have had roofs lifted off. We've had reports of corn flattened out in Fulton County, power outages, and tree limbs down. Probably going to see significant additions to that list as well, Ryan.
I have to believe I see it behind you there across northern Indiana as people are coming out. It looks like that map behind you is starting to fill in a little bit thicker here in northwest Ohio once we get the rain out. And keep in mind, something else I wanted to point out, Chris, behind that main squall line, which of course is the main wind threat, I bet if you zoom into that rain across parts of like Wood County, Lucas County here, there's still lots of lightning with it, and many times can be very dangerous.
Yeah, two dangers: lightning that trails the actual storm system, Ryan, and if there are power lines down, just treat them as live power lines. Don't go anywhere near them. Let the authorities certainly notify them and let them take care of that one. All right, let's get right to the squall line that continues to march to the east. We do have active severe weather alerts, and those are out there for Erie and Huron County, also parts of southeastern Seneca County, and was what Ryan was talking about as well. Even as this squall line moves to the east, that's where it's got the main concentration of our high wind gusts, thunder, and lightning. But what we get behind that is actually a little bit of a weak echo channel, which is a brief lull in some of that activity or the heavier rainfall. And then behind that weaker echo channel, which is right in that vicinity there, we're seeing some stratiform rain that reforms along I-75, and there still is the risk. Those clouds are still at least partially charged up with some electricity, and you can get some zaps of some lightning bolts. So you could still get some lightning bolts even extending back through I-75. So even though your severe risk is over, there is the potential of some lightning that could be a risk. Look at the numerous damage reports that continue to come in across the Toledo metro. And that high wind gust, that was Rossford reporting over 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Had some reports of some high wind out towards Swanton. In fact, tree damage over on a house. And reports in West Toledo again. Yeah, here was that report, and you're seeing it right here live on WTOL 11. First alert, Doppler radar, one of those large tree limbs. Yeah, this is going to take a chainsaw likely to get off the roof of that house in West Toledo. I've got numerous reports, and again, thank you on social media. You found your First Alert meteorologist Ryan Wichman. You've been sending him pictures. You found me on Twitter as well. Please continue to do that, or you go to the First Alert weather app. You can upload the pictures right there. We'd love to see those pictures and connect with you when you're able to do so safely. And again, the severe threat west of I-75, it is now over with. We'll take you to the southern flank of this one where we're seeing a decrease in the lightning threat. Still, though, toward Bucyrus, officially under the severe thunderstorm warning as this one marches off to the east, and it will quickly be out of our area. I did take a quick look at the timing of this, though. Severe thunderstorm warning in effect until 5:15, so that will take us into our 5 o'clock newscast. Really, it's for Crawford, Erie, and Huron County in our viewing area, and the threat of that is going to be moving from Norwalk and east very quickly. There are a few storms, though, that still do have my attention. This one particularly west of Norwalk that's still generating some active lightning strikes. In fact, each time you see it right there, that's a brand new registered flash of lightning. And again, First Alert Doppler radar has the ability to ingest that data nearly real time in its occurrence to show you where we're registering not only the lightning threat, but also where we have these severe weather alerts that are active. I'm going to take a quick slice through this storm, and it is still generating some lightning, still generating some downpours. But as we saw nearly about 45 minutes to an hour ago, we had some of these storms that if you sliced on through them, you took like an X-ray, they were 45, 50, 55,000 feet into the atmosphere, which was able to generate a lot more energy for heavier downpours and gusty winds. This somewhat, so to speak, is a little bit of a weaker storm. So fortunately heading towards what looks to be a weakening phase of these storms, but it still has a really hefty cluster of lightning. And again, this is Norwalk, there's Huron, Sandusky, Cedar Point is going to be right in this vicinity. So we're pretty close to Route 20. That's Route 20 going past Monroeville and headed back over toward Fremont is where you're going to cross right through that area of heavy rain, thunder and lightning, and that potential downpour that is occurring. And again, these storms continuing to march off to the east. About 40 miles per hour is the movement of these storms. They're going to be moving through Norwalk, already into Norwalk, over Cedar Point. As we highlighted, it would hit you about 30 minutes ago. And that's about when the skies opened up, and this is going to be moving east of Route 250 and headed out of our viewing area very swiftly as we go through the rest of the afternoon. Quick recap on all this. So, Ryan, it certainly has been a busy afternoon with numerous warnings. I'd go as far to say that no county in northwest Ohio was untouched by a severe thunderstorm warning, at least at some point or another.
I think that's a fair thing to say. And Chris, you were just mentioning as well the thunderstorms that are now beginning to wrap up across northwest Ohio. Some of the images, we're getting those in. I just talked to our newsroom. They're going to have some of those for us coming up today at 5. So in about 18 minutes, our WTOL 11 News at 5 starts. Just to show you here, things are really winding down across the Toledo Metro. And Chris, I know you're analyzing this as well. The storms, at least the strongest of it, are now pushing out of northwest Ohio and southeastern Michigan. So likely be wrapping up coverage here in the next few moments as storms are coming into Norwalk, but thankfully not producing any widespread damage, at least in the last few minutes there. No storm reports. The worst of it has now pushed well east of Toledo. These are straight line wind storms. We have not seen any signs of rotation, thankfully. But boy, oh boy, there's a long night to go for parts of eastern Ohio as this line of storms does extend Ontario all the way through the central part of the state, and more storms are developing there. Back off to the west for us. It looks like we get a little bit of a reprieve, and I do want to hold your attention here. I know Chris is going to talk about this one here as we get into more of the formal forecasting up on WTOL 11 News at 5 and 6, but I just want to draw your attention up here. We are watching a renewed line of thunderstorms from Wisconsin up into the UP of Michigan, and some indications are if the atmosphere recovers behind this line, some of that tonight will start swinging our way. So I know we'll be watching that very closely. Hard to believe we're talking about the potential for 3 major lines of storms potentially in 24 hours. This is round number 2. Round number 3 is to be determined, but still something we're going to watch very closely. And if you've had your First Alert weather app on you this afternoon, you know we've been keeping you 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of any of these as they've come on through. So Chief Meteorologist Chris Vickers, I know you're watching what's going on out there, but it does look like the storms are winding down, thankfully, across northwest Ohio.
Yeah, but boy, what a blast blast of storms that we had. And Ryan, you said it too. It's been a while since we've had an event similar to this, right?
Yeah, I think we go back to, was it June 10th last year? You talked about the Sandusky State Theater that was damaged.
Yeah, and that was way last summer. And, before that, things have been quiet all spring. And we've been wondering, where's the severe weather going to come? And usually when it comes, Ryan, it's hit or miss. This one was a different story. It really got every corner of Northwest Ohio and southern Michigan.
It has been a while since we've had a squall line that has moved all the way across, and as you said, really left no county untouched for Northwest Ohio. So we're always prepared, we're always ready, and again, first indications of this one, we sent it to you on the First Alert weather app, keeping everybody ahead of it in Northwest Ohio.
And the interesting thing about these two, Ryan, these are quick-moving squall lines. They move about 40 to 45 miles per hour, so they're from one end of the area to the other. In a matter of just a couple of hours, we started our coverage just after 2 o'clock. In fact, you could have caught the team Facebook Live as well. And on the First Alert weather app and YouTube Live as well, we had you covered on all those platforms. Quick look at First Alert Doppler radar, and as Ryan pointed out before as well, the damage trail from this squall line extends all the way back into northern Indiana, southwest Michigan, and into northwest Ohio. Now, no, don't expect any further damage reports west of I-75 outside of what still may trickle in. Let's get a little closer here east of I-75. Still do have an active severe thunderstorm warning. That's until 5:15. That's for Crawford, Erie, and Huron County in our particular viewing area. So that's going to take us another 30 minutes from now into our 5 o'clock newscast, where we do have that active severe thunderstorm warning. We're seeing the numbers dwindle, though, as far as the count of severe thunderstorm warnings that we do have. We've also seen a reduction in the area of our severe thunderstorm watch. We could go ahead and basically chop a few more counties off of this. I don't see any risk across southern Michigan. You're all clear of that. And I've given you the all clear in the I-75 corridor across the Toledo Metro, Bowling Green, and Findlay. Still could be a little risk of some lightning as that rain does occur, but the severe risk is no longer a threat. We're seeing southeastern Seneca County and basically clear of that as well. It's really over toward Erie and Huron County, moving out of Crawford County, that we still do have a risk at least of a couple strong storms, maybe some wind gusts or some heavier downpours that will be occurring. Now, fortunately, if you do, if you are outdoors or plan to head on out later today, once you see that lull in lightning for about 30 minutes, well, it's safe to finally head back outdoors. But give it about 30 minutes before you actually head back outside. The first flash of lightning reminds you to move immediately to shelter. And what we could talk about frequently as well, what's called the bolt from the blue, which means even after the storm is passed, you can get some highly charged particles high up in the atmosphere that still can generate enough energy for a lightning strike that could occur as much as 30 minutes after the storm has passed. That's why we tell you, urge your patience and caution. So there's a look at the severe thunderstorm warnings. They're still over Erie and Huron County down toward Crawford County, and I do anticipate that those are going to be allowed to expire shortly after 5:15. That is the latest that warning will go into our viewing area, and that does include Crawford, Erie, and Huron County. But it was a quick-moving storm system, and again, that extending all the way from the thumb of Michigan down through the Detroit Metro, all the way across Northwest Ohio, through Lima, and down past Wapakoneta, where those strong storms have come across Northwest Ohio. And it's a mix of high wind reports, wind damage, some areas of torrential rainfall. But the thing is, these storms were quick enough moving that there was no risk of any flash flooding that was possible with these storms. So we do watch that very close as the storms have been racing off to these. Did get one report there of some hail that did come out of Hancock County, in addition to some high winds that were registered across Hancock County as well. Some reports of some tree limbs down in and around the Findlay area, and at one time we were seeing the strongest point of the storm moving across Hancock County as well, and that has now moved well off to the east. These storms are going to continue to diminish, working off to the east as we go through your afternoon and into the early evening. We're going to get you situated for our 5 o'clock newscast, which is going to be coming up in just about 10 minutes. And we'll recap the current and ongoing severe weather risk, but also highlight some of the damage that's reported across our area. We've got First Alert Defender now out with meteorologist Diane Phillips. First Alert meteorologist Ryan Wichman has been alongside all afternoon, all evening as we get ready to roll to our 5 o'clock newscast. And we'll see you coming up on W211 News at 5 p.m. in just about 10 minutes.